Yo, what is up, YouTube? I hope you guys are doing fantastic today. Today, I'm bringing you guys the rotations guide, which is a video you guys have wanted for a long time, and I've kind of pushed it off because it's like you can try to make it into a guide, but it's mostly something that you have to decide. Like there's build guides, and they can basically tell you exactly how to build. But there's really no rotation thing that will just answer all your questions, because a lot of this stuff is like you coming up with it and you having to decide what to do. I can write this guideline, but it's up to you to be able to figure it out, what you want to do and how you want to do it. I finally put it together. It took me a little bit of time too. I've got it ready, and we're going to be just jumping right in. Rotations. Rotations are all based on timings. Timings decide everything when it comes to rotating. Where your jungler is going, if your mid laner is going to a side lane or going to a camp, when your ADC is backing, like stuff like that. Those timings are what make rotations important. If those timings don't happen, rotations aren't going to be happening. If everyone just stayed in their exact same spot the entire time and nothing spawned, nobody would be moving anywhere. You'd just be farming minions the entire time. So rotations are based on timings. That is the number one thing. That is the first thing. Remember that. Buffs are the first fight point in the early game. No big objective is up before 5 minutes when the scorpions spawn. No objectives are up, so you're fighting on buffs. That is purple buff, red buff, blue buff. Those are the three buffs. Speed buff is way too far back. Green buff is far back and also not valuable, and is not worth any gold and XP when you get it. So those two are just not worth it. Sometimes you can evade speed buff. We'll get into that later. But the three big ones: purple buff, red buff, blue buff. Buffs spawn every 2 minutes. Like I said, timings are important, so you're going to want to remember these. They're obviously out here. You can read through this. You can go to this website, read through all this, and it'll tell you the exact spawn time of everything. But I have the numbers down right now. Buffs spawn every 2 minutes. So if they drop the purple buff at 3 minutes, it's going to be spawning at 5 minutes. They drop it at 5 minutes, it's going to be spawning at 7 minutes. Know that. Now you know when that purple buff spawn, and that is a fight you can take. That is a fight you can have your jungler rotate to, your mid laner rotate to, maybe even your solo rotate to, because he's proxied all the way up here and he has got a free rotation. But that is the first step, knowing when buffs spawn, knowing when they respawn. Number 2, greater scorpions spawn every 3 minutes. These ones that spawn before Gold Fury, spawn before Fire Giant, and then they spawn here, 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 and here. Those are valuable, but they're not overly valuable. You get actually a lot of gold and XP from them, but they're pretty hard to invade, and they're also kind of hard to do because of how far you have to go into their jungle for the Gold Fury side, and then how at risk you are on Fire Giant side. There is 1, 2, 3, 4 places you can get attacked from. You can also get jumped over the wall too. So that's why you don't see a ton of scorpion invades, and that's why you see mostly just try to get this first one. Because as soon as you get this first one, you just got that slight lead. Because it's good XP, it's good gold. They spawn at 5 minutes. You rotate to those, you do them. That is a timing for a rotation from either your jungler, your support, your ADC, your solo, your mid. That's the next one. So if you rotate to this Gold Fury, your mid laner can rotate. You can go here. If you're a support, you can rotate to the Fire Giant side. There you go. And then the last one, the big objectives. That's Draugr, Gold Fury, Fire, Pyro, and then EFG eventually later into the game. Those respawn every 5 minutes. And they start spawning at 10 minutes. But they do not spawn until you kill these scorpions. That's why you kind of want to kill these scorpions usually pretty early. Because if you're getting those scorpions, you're probably getting ahead. That means you probably want those big objectives spawning to be able to rotate and be able to take those. So now you know rotations, you know timers. That's the big first step. Memorize those. Memorize buffs. Memorize timers on all those things. Memorize when they spawn. That's the first step. Second step, knowing when you're strong. Rotations shouldn't happen unless you know when you're strong. Not just you knowing when your team is strong, knowing when the enemy team's strong, knowing when the enemy 2v2 is strong. Once you learn that, rotations make a lot more sense, and then they become a lot just easier to just understand. And there's 3 types of strength in Smite. You get strength in 3 ways. There's strength of the god you're playing, strength in numbers, meaning like the gods you have. If you have 3 gods in solo side of the map and they have 2, that's advantage you. And then strength in items. If you're ahead in gold, doesn't matter how bad your god is in the game. You're playing Kali, but you're 4 items deep, and they have a Thanatos who's 3 items deep. That should be in Thanatos' favor in the mid game, or it could be, I guess. But Kali's got 4 items deep. She's strong. And those are the 3 things. Those are when strengths come, and that's how you define strength. So the first one, strength of the god. If you're playing an early game god or an early game 2v2 or a good fighting 2v2, there's 3 2v2s. It's duo 2v2, which is support ADC. There's mid 2v2, which is jungle mid. And then there's solo 2v2, which is solo jungle. And you should know those 2v2s like the back of your hand, whichever role you play. If you're jungle, you have to know 2 of them, with solo and with mid. If you're support and ADC, you just got to know 1. Same with mid and solo, you only need to know 1. But you need to know those 2v2s, and you need to know the enemy's 2v2s. Say your duo lane is Izanami Geb, and they have Sylvanas, Ola run. Seems like a pretty good 2v2. Izanami clears waves pretty fast. Geb has decent damage. He's pretty quick at getting to lane. Iza insta clears and then can fight. But you don't have the sustain that an Ola run and a Sylvanas have. They also have just as good a clear as you. Maybe not just as good, maybe slightly less. But if they're able to walk up and poke you out a little bit, they don't really care to take that, or they don't really mind taking that damage. While you're trading with them, they're winning the battle because their health is full. Yours is getting lower, even if you're barely out clearing them. So stuff like that, he's got to start understanding that stuff. And that's why I say the more you play the game, the more you will understand these rotations, these timers. But everything becomes more defined when you learn these strengths of these gods. And that is an early game thing. The 2v2 is an early game thing, strength of the god. Strength in numbers comes when rotations actually start happening. When your support starts rotating to a 3v3 in solo, your jungle comes to duo and it becomes a 3v2 or a 3v3, well, 3v2, or your mid rotating also and making it a 4v3. But if you can track that jungler and you know where that jungler is, you know where they're strong. So take it like the map, split it in half, solo side, duo side. If they back, that means they're off the map completely and you don't have to worry about them. But if you have 2 on the left side of the map, 3 on the right side of the map, right now you are strong on the right side of the map. And the only way you aren't strong on the right side of the map in terms of numbers, if they for some reason have 4 on that side. But then you look at the other side, they'll only have 1 and they'll have 2. So that's like the strength in numbers thing. They're going for Fire Giant and you send, or you only have like, say they send 4 people to Pyro and you only have 3 on that side of the map. You probably just want to end up giving that up because your strength is not there yet. Unless you have that strength in the early game, you have, I don't know, a Ra who's ahead with a Thanatos that's ahead and your solo laner's Osiris who's ahead. And you can actually maybe fight into that 3v4 when it comes to the items and the gods. Like all these things play together in knowing where you're strong. And until you know all of them and kind of learn all of them and be able to process like where you're strong, how you're strong, that's where it comes in. There's a couple other outside factors that also play a part. Even if you're really strong, if you don't have a form of engage, you really can't get in there. It's just a bunch of squishies. You might not be able to win the fight. But the biggest 3 things are the strength of the god, strength in numbers, and strength in items. So remember those. So timers are the most important, and then knowing where you're strong. Now that you know, those are like, that's just like basically all you need for rotations. Once you learn all that stuff, you just have to be able to put it into practice.
We're talking about practice.
You just got to slowly be able to understand that you are either weak here, strong here, you have the rotations, you have globals, which is another thing you have to add into. Say you have 3 on the left side of the map and they have 2 on the right side of the map, but they have an Athena Apollo. It's something you got to worry about. But it's stuff like that that understands rotations. So now the biggest thing I get asked is when do you rotate out a lane? Again, it's not something I can just say rotate now, but if you want to just like a quick answer of when do you want to rotate out, I usually rotate off the first back when I get a full item. So say I'm going Thebes, I'll wait for that 2,000 gold, get the full Thebes and get a couple wards and then leave base and walk either mid, maybe to solo side, maybe to the jungle just to get some wards. But that is usually when I look to rotate out. However, if your 2v2 is just pounding them and you are super far ahead and you want to play in that 2v2, you can force them and you can stay on that side of the map to either try to match that, try to get a rotation off, which you can counter rotate, or just keep them in that 2v1 where you will just continue winning it because you are so far ahead. And then at a point, maybe that 2v1 got so far ahead that you don't even need to be over there anymore. And just that 1v1, because of how many items you have lead in that ADC spot, you can just leave and your ADC is just going to be pounding them anyway. So that's like the thing you kind of just need to know. Like it basically comes back to the strength. Are you strong? If you are strong, you can stay. If you're weak or you want to defend your blue buff, maybe like you have a feeling they're going for that blue buff because your team is kind of getting beat a little bit over there and you being there is actually a difference maker and makes you strong over there. That's a good rotation to make. Defending that blue buff or maybe invading the enemy's blue buff because you are so far ahead and you are in such a good spot. That is a great rotation to have. The one caveat about mid rotations are mids are kind of the power farmers of the map. You want them to just be focusing on themselves and kind of getting as much farm as possible and not over rotating. A mid rotating allows the other mid, if they don't rotate, to then power farm and get super far ahead. And it is still not that easy to deal with a mid who's very far ahead. The problem in rank that you guys probably understand is mid laners rotate a lot. Both sides do. Either your team, the enemy's team, they both rotate a lot. So it's not something you have to worry about. Once you get into comp and you start understanding that mid laners are very important to have just that constant farm and you don't need them rotating or you don't want them rotating a ton. Or if it's a bad rotation or literally only rotating if it's a great rotation, like that's something you'll slowly start to pick up on. But at a ranked level, people will rotate. People will rotate. So just understand where you are strong, where you want to fight. If you have a lead and you want to push that, you can push that lead by invading. Buffs is the first thing. So early game, you want to start invading buffs. In the mid game, which is, I consider mid game like 7 minutes. Smite doesn't really have that big of a mid game. It kind of goes mid into late pretty quickly. But I consider early game, the laning phase. The mid games come around level 7. Can come as early as level 5 though. I mean, sorry, minute 7, minute 5. And that's when you want to get these scorpions off the map because they are a lot of gold. If you get both of them, you're going to get about 1,000 gold swing. Very, very good. So make sure you're getting those scorpions and then start playing for the objectives. Play when you're strong. Play around your power spikes. I haven't really talked too much about power spikes, but if you back for just an absolutely sick item, maybe you're a Poseidon and you just got Magus, you want to fight. Like, you are ready to fight. If your team is ready to fight, you're ready to fight. You want to be fighting with them because you're a Poseidon with Magus. But if you're a tier 2 Book of Thoth and your team's like, yo, let's fight, you're like, bro, I've got five power right now. Like, I'm not trying to fight. Give me a couple more minutes. Let me get this book online, get some stacks on it. Then I'm good to go. But until then, I'm not looking to fight because I'm going to be worthless. So just understanding that stuff, that is basically all you need to know about rotations. And this works for literally every role. This is a rotations guide, not just a rotations for support guide, because everything I said about support can be put into other roles. So understand that. Like I said, just go out there, practice, start understanding those 2v2s, start paying attention and what's happening in your games. If somebody's winning that 2v2, maybe you like make a mental note of that 2v2 is strong into our 2v2, stuff like that. I know Milzy used to actually record God 2v2s in his things, and he used to make red bad, yellow good, or yellow okay, and green good. And that's how he understood if a god was a good early game or a good 2v2. And it's actually a pretty smart idea to do. You can do the same thing with solo and jungle and mid and jungle. That is about it. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you guys learned a little something. If you guys still aren't, maybe subscribe, like the video, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.